Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Blind Girls Book Talk podcast. My name is Aria.
And I'm Belle.
And we are two sisters who are legally blind who have come up with the idea to start this podcast in order to go over different sorts of bookish content. This spans from bad retellings of books to book theories to recent read talks to slight reviews, everything in between. But today we are going to be talking about a bad retelling, and this is our first one of this, which I am super excited about. So, Belle, would you mind explaining to our audiences what the bad retellings are and how they started?
Okay, so Aria is not a fan of the classics, but I'm a huge fan of the classics. But through the classics that she has read, she will then kind of create a synopsis of what she thinks happened in the book, but it's not always accurate. It originally started, one of my favorite Jane Austen book is Northanger Abbey. And after a couple years of me bugging Aria, I finally got her to at least listen to it. And we were in the car together and we were talking about it. And she just starts telling me the story. And I'm like, no, that isn't right. You're wrong. And she had me laughing so hard because it just was not the story at all. She missed some major points because she's like, well, why did this happen? I'm like, well, because of this. And she's like, no, that's not what happened. Yeah, that is what happened. So from there, she will just take any classic and then just put her spin on it, telling the story completely wrong. So that's what we're going to talk about today with the book Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier.
Yes. So she also forgot to mention that another thing that I would do bad retellings for would be ballets, because
oh my goodness, yeah.
Belle used to be a really big fan of ballet. She used to dance a lot. And so when we would go to see these ballets, she would talk a lot about what the story is behind the movements. And so because I am me, I decided to make a bit of a joke, I want to say, about how I thought what the movements were actually telling versus,
what the actual story was.
Correct. So it all started with the Nutcracker in that regard, and then it kind of continued with the classic literature, as Belle had stated. So, like Belle said, today we are going to be doing my bad retelling of Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. But before we do that, we're first going to talk about what our general thoughts were about the book before we get into any sort of bad retelling or spoiler territory. Belle, what was your thoughts?
So Rebecca is actually the book that really solidified my love for the classics, but I believe we read it pretty much around the same age. So as a freshman in high school, you got to choose between reading Rebecca or Lord of the Flies. Most everybody else picked Lord of the Flies because it was a shorter book, but I knew from the synopsis that I was not going to like it, so I chose Rebecca. And I fell in love with it. I read all the unofficial sequels to it. I finished it, I think, in less than a week. I was the first to finish it within my class, and only 3 of us chose Rebecca, so it was kind of an awkward thing when we'd have to do projects, because I'd be like, oh, did you get to this part? And the other 2 girls who picked it are just like, no, what are you talking about? But I absolutely adored it, and it completely sparked my love for the classics.
Okay, for me, when I read Rebecca, at first I would say I was very lukewarm to it. As the book went on, I think it got worse for me. There were just certain things that I thought in my mind just kept repeating and repeating and repeating.
You obviously missed the lovely psychological aspect of the book.
Yes, I think I did, honestly. I don't think this is a book that really resonated with me, clicked with me, whatever you want to call it. It was just not a book that I took to. And then it turned to a book that I just did not enjoy to read in the least. Now, I did end up reading one of the sequels to the book, which I don't know what was going through my brain when I was like, yeah, I'll just read this other thing. That'll be fine.
Because you wanted to impress our English teacher?
Probably. I was a teacher's pet at heart. I'm not going to lie and say that I wasn't. I very much...
I was, but I never pretended to like books. Heck, when we talked about Animal Farm, I very much discussed my hatred for that book.
Well, see, the thing is, I think when I was in school, I wanted to give the books a fair shake. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to just be like, oh, I hated it. I did want to try to give the teachers a thought that, like, hey, it's not hopeless. You know, I think that's what I was trying to do. I decided, okay, I'll read the sequel. And I read the Mrs. De Winter sequel. And I remember absolutely nothing about it. I couldn't tell you a single thing about that book.
Wait, which one was that? Was that the...
That was the first of the sequels in air
Oh,
quotes.
that still followed their story, though.
Yes.
The husband and wife from the first book.
I believe so.
Is that what it was?
I believe so, because the only other sequel that I know is the one that is... The way that it was described to me is that it is the story of Rebecca through Rebecca's point of view. And that is the one that I actually did want to read, but I just never got around to it.
Oh, that one. Yeah, we discussed that one.
Yes.
It was about, like, the journalist writing a story on her life, and...
I couldn't tell you because I didn't read it.
I didn't like that one.
So that's our general thoughts on the books and their sequels. But now, the moment that we've all been waiting for, my bad retelling of Rebecca. And I will say, this is the one bad retelling of mine that is super short.
It is legit 2 sentences.
And those 2 sentences are, oh my goodness, Maxim doesn't love me. He only has eyes for Rebecca. He only loves her. I'm so sad. Actually, that's more like 4 sentences, but
you kind of powdered it more than what you normally do. Because
yes.
Normally when she tells anybody about this book, her main point is, Maxim doesn't love me.
But see, for me, that was what it was the entire book. I get that there were some points where she's going through the house and she's, I want to say, like, seeing Rebecca's ghost, but not really. It's one of those very much blurred lines kind of deals where essentially you know that she's kind of being messed with in a way.
Yeah, she is being, like, completely and utterly brainwashed.
Right. But at the same time, there is so much of that thought of the Maxim doesn't love me kind of thing that just resonates throughout the whole thing. For me, regardless of that psychological aspect to it, that's the thing that I took away from this book, is that Maxim doesn't love me. He only loves his wife, his dead wife, and that's it. Now, Belle, what actually happens in this book? An actual synopsis.
Okay, so the actual synopsis that I'm going to give in my own words, although rereading this book, it is dark. Yeah. Like, it is extremely dark, and I loved it. And I mean, I still love it. But, like, I was 15 when I read it.
Yeah, I feel like
so,
that was
like,
the age, 15, 16.
And I'm like, looking back, I'm like, why was I so upset? Like, I still love the book, and I have, like, 2 copies. But beside the point, it's kind of one of those things where it's just like, what was going on with my brain? So what the story is we have our narrator, like, she goes through the entire story without knowing her name. Like, we never know her name, which also really was my biggest pet peeve of the entire thing, was not knowing the name of the narrator. But while she's on vacation, like, accompanying this rich older woman as a companion, she meets Maxim, who is half of her age pretty much, and falls in love. And after a very short courtship, they decide to get married. So then...
Wait, pause for 1 second. Did you mean double her age, not half her age?
Yes, double. Oh my goodness.
Okay. No, it's okay. I just heard that and it took me a second and I was like, wait a minute. I thought he was older than her.
No, he is. She's like early 20s. He's 42.
Okay. Continue. Sorry.
Sorry. No, that was my bad. I'm scatterbrained. I apologize. Anyway, she marries him and then they go to his estate. She meets the housekeeper, and the entire time the housekeeper is pretty much just like, well, you'll never be like his first wife, Rebecca, and really just starts to brainwash her. And she's like, oh no, what am I going to do? My husband, he's probably upset because I'm nothing like his first wife. So then she tries to kind of fold herself into the image that Rebecca had, to go as far as to recreating a costume she wore at a costume party that Rebecca and Maxim used to host. From there, he gets, really mad, and she's like, oh no, I completely messed up. He, actually is in love with her, does not like me. So in a sense, she does kind of go through that Maxim doesn't love me, he only loves Rebecca. However, through all of the housekeeper's brainwashing, she, tries to commit suicide, but then stops when a boat crashes on the shore near their home. And then, they find a body on the boat. Well, divers go down and they find a body, and it's found out that that's Rebecca. And so then it becomes a whole thing of what happened to her. So then she brings up everything to Maxim, and it's just like, you wish I was her. And he's kind of just like, no, I hated her. She was selfish. She was shallow, mean, cruel, everything. I hated her guts. Our marriage was a complete sham. Don't even go there. And so then he ends up telling her that he actually killed her. She was pregnant with another man's child, but she was going to make Maxim raise it as his, and the child was going to inherit his estate and all of his wealth. That, of course, infuriated him. So he killed her and then covered it up to make it look like a boating accident. And then the man who was the supposed father of the child, her first cousin, is kind of just like, no, I have proof that this wasn't a suicide because...
Wait, pause. Because I forgot this part. She actually got pregnant with her cousin's child?
Yeah, first cousin.
Wow, I did not remember that. Okay, carry on.
You don't pick up on a lot of things.
Well, no, it's not that I don't pick up on it. I think that at the time I probably did, but that book then eventually boiled down to what my bad retelling was. You know what I mean? I took everything else, it didn't matter. Okay, carry on though.
Carrying onward. So the first cousin's like, no, I'm the father of the child. I have a note that she wrote to me the night that she died saying how excited she was to go to the doctor's appointment to look at the child. I should also mention this is set way far back in time, so a lot of this stuff is not relevant.
Yeah, it definitely is one of those stories where you do notice that it is set further back in time because it's okay for her to be having a child with her cousin, which that is definitely not something that is looked upon kindly today.
Yeah.
So do remember all of this. A lot of times when we will cover the classics, there might be some of these moral dilemma kind of situations. So please just keep that in mind. This is an old book. It was written from a different time.
Continuing on, then of course, Maxim and the narrator, so scared because Maxim doesn't want to go to jail. The narrator doesn't want to lose her new husband because she loves him and everything else. So they go find the doctor that Rebecca was seeing when she was alive. Come to find out that Rebecca was pretty much dying. She had months left to live before Maxim killed her. I can't remember exactly what was wrong. I know it was cancer, and I know there was some other issue to where she could not bear a child and she only had 4 months to live. So there's that. The housekeeper had mentioned that the only thing that Rebecca had feared was dying, a lingering death. So she just kind of didn't want to slowly die, which was what was happening. So you find out that pretty much Rebecca told a lie in order for Maxim to kill her.
Gotcha.
So that, of course, Maxim's like, oh, yes, I'm great. This is great. But after they're coming back from the inquest and everything, Maxim and the narrator are driving to their nice estate, and they see a glow in the distance, and ashes are falling from the sky as their estate had been set on fire. And that's pretty much how the book ends.
Yeah, and don't you find out that it is the housekeeper that ends up being the one to...
Yes, because she was mental.
Right, yeah, because she loved Rebecca, and I don't remember exactly, I don't know if it was ever clear if it was a surrogate daughter type of thing, or a friend type of love, or if it was actually, like, love. I don't think the book was ever really clear about that.
It just was kind of just like the housekeeper has an unhealthy obsession.
Yeah, which kind of makes me personally lean towards more it was kind of a love type of situation, like a...
Yeah, I can't tell you for certain because the whole thing is told through the narrator, so of course, again, with that time, nothing like that would really have been said.
Right, exactly. But
it's just the housekeeper was obsessed with what Rebecca was and with the image Rebecca had, and then was trying to kind of brainwash the narrator into trying to be what Rebecca was. And then, when she figured out, oh no, you can't be that, she's just kind of like, well, you might as well just kind of end it all.
Right, exactly. Well, I feel like we're actually starting to run out of time here for today's episode. Is there any final thoughts from you, Belle, on what we talked about today?
Other than your retelling is wrong?
Which I knew you would say that, but I figured I would ask the question anyway.
Yeah.
For me, I feel like my retelling, especially if you've read the book and you ignore all of the brainwashing like I chose to, I feel like it's a pretty accurate representation of that book overall, but that's just me. Thank you guys all for joining us today and listening to us talk about Rebecca and giving you a bad retelling versus what the book...
An actual retelling?
Yes, versus what the book actually is. Again, thank you all for tuning in. If you liked the episode, leave a like, leave a review, leave a comment, share all of that good stuff, especially if you have anybody in your life who loves reading or likes to listen to this kind of bookish content. We would appreciate that. It does help us to grow. But next time we are going to be talking about
our buddy read of Stalking Jack the Ripper.
Oh, that's going to be a very exciting episode because I finally have been able to read that. We will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.